I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard.
The way women change history, respectfully, they don't take no for an answer. Jana Monroe was one of them.
If they don't offer you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. That was me.
She began as a probation officer for a California agency, climbing her way up in the police department to working juvenile cases. But she knew her calling went far beyond that.
I just felt I could and should be doing more. And I'd always been interested in the FBI.
She told her boss she was going to apply.
He says, no, I bet you $15 you're not going to get into the FBI.
Fortune favors the bold.
But when I actually was selected and got a class date for it, he knew he owed me the money. But instead of just handing me $15, he laminated it on a plaque.
But her dogged demeanor, mixed with undeniable intelligence, led to the most meaningful role she ever had in the FBI, the first female agent in the behavioral science unit at Quantico.
How do you analyze the behavior of a serial killer?
What you're talking about is offender traits and characteristics, which is often called offender profiling. It was amazing how you could see some of the evil, diabolical things that they did. And they'd give a comment like, oh, you think this is bad? You should see what so-and-so, have you talked to so-and-so in the other cell over there? You should see what he did.
Before he was executed, she and her partner spent hours analyzing conversations with Ted Bundy in the 80s.
He was probably one of the most prolific serial killers.
Dozens of victims, both dead and alive.
We thought at one point that could be 100.
Ted Bundy tried to manipulate the FBI like he manipulated his victims.
So each year he would tell you a victim and where they were buried for another year stay of execution. And that way, avoiding the death penalty, right? And he'd be serving life in prison. Well, they don't make deals with serial killers, thank goodness. The way that I would analyze him is he was the most frightening because he seemed the most normal.
Monroe says Bundy didn't operate like most killers.
He would select the body disposal site before he selected his victim. Where would they not find the body in time for decomposition to have set in so you couldn't identify it perhaps as much?
So he almost worked backwards.
Yes.
Ted Bundy may have been the most calculated, but Monroe's work would continue to one of the most disturbing serial killers to ever live.
I should have stayed with God. I tried and failed and created a Holocaust. And if I could give my life right now to bring their loved ones back, I would do it.
Jeffrey Dahmer is known to have killed 17 men between the late 70s and early 90s before he was caught, having sex with their corpses, dismembering them, then keeping different body parts. In 1994, Monroe was going to be face-to-face in prison with the convicted cannibal.
I had an appointment to go and interview him after he had been apprehended and was sitting in prison, but unfortunately he was killed a few days prior to my interview date.
What were you planning on asking Jeffrey Dahmer?
I'd been told that he started having these feelings, these sexual feelings, when he was like in his early teens, but he was excited more by dead bodies, and he would fantasize about men. So I was going to see if he could identify when that happened and when he thought he started acting on it, and did he have a similar feeling for females?
Monroe's position ended up being a delicate balance of using her compassion and emotion to her advantage while being able to compartmentalize that to get through the horror of some of these events. While she was working in Denver at the time, the 9/11 terrorist attacks required her to travel to Las Vegas.
All 19 hijackers had been identified as being in that area, and we thought that's where the planning was going on.
As devastation in New York and Virginia paralyzed the country in fear, Monroe wasted no time in Sin City.
And then the hotels were very cooperative in working with us, looking at the manifests as to where certain people were at certain times.
And so you could basically piece together their whereabouts right before this happened?
Correct. Trying to ascertain and understand the mindset, and okay, so they're in Las Vegas because they're making Las Vegas the next target.
Were there plans that you found
There were indications that Las Vegas could have been one of the targets.
The 9/11 investigation didn't stop when Monroe left Vegas. She would go on to become special agent in charge of the Phoenix FBI office, working with Agent Ken Williams, who wrote the Phoenix Memo less than 2 months before 9/11 happened, trying to warn headquarters about a startling situation with students from abroad attending American flight schools.
There were these people that were learning to fly, but none of them wanted to learn how to land. And he thought that was very odd.
So had anybody acted on the Phoenix Memo sooner, do you think there was a chance 9/11 could have been prevented?
You know, that's a $1 trillion question. I would certainly not answer that, only because, you know, when you're looking in your lens in hindsight, everything seems so clear.
That idea paralleled her personal emotions, reflecting on a decades-long career that quite literally was like something out of a movie.
And I hadn't realized I'd suppressed some of those things.
She's always been one with words, but not usually in the form of pen to paper. It was something different for her, writing a book about it all.
This book, I really wanted to dedicate it to those hearts of darkness, to the too many victims and their families.
And that's just it. Monroe found her own way to get to the heart of those she worked with: families, killers, suspects, victims. And she did it her way.
And I think by keeping that genuineness in your personality, it's going to spill over into your work.
You didn't have to change who you were to find success in an industry like that. You just had to jump over some barriers at first.
Yes, I jumped over some barriers with my 4-inch heels.
I love that so.
With her 4-inch
With her 4-inch heels.
4-inch heels, okay.
And that's why I loved her so much, because she's so successful, she's so intelligent, but she was always herself throughout this entire career. And she was unapologetic about it.
Yeah. I mean, you almost have to be.
Yeah.
Completely raw to take in all the details. I mean, I'm thinking about this woman. She has heard everything, she's seen everything, she's analyzed everything, and she's talking about Bundy, and she goes, analyzing him, he was the most frightening because he seemed the most normal. That is so powerful.
It's terrifying.
Yeah,
right?
it's terrifying and powerful at the same time, because you think about how much she's seen, in people.
And tell us about the Silence of the Lambs movie. Famously played, Jodie Foster plays an FBI agent. And
plays her.
Basically, so Jodie Foster actually came to Quantico to train with Jana on how it really is in the real world being an FBI agent at Quantico and in the behavioral science unit. And Jana said it was an awesome experience, and Jodie was fantastic. And she also said Hannibal Lecter in that movie is kind of like the worst of all the serial killers that she has analyzed in her FBI career, and said, thank God Hannibal Lecter is not a true person.
Just curious, and I'm sure you asked, or maybe, I don't know, but how do you train an actress? What did that involve?
Well, she was talking about how, if you're going into death row, that you go in with your hair pulled back and plain clothes, no makeup. You don't kind of go in with a dress and heels and things like that, and just the way that certain trainings would actually happen in real life. And I guess Jodie would say to her, hey, this is the line that was written for me. Is this something you'd actually say? Jana said, no, but here's how I would say it.
Right.
So she was really happy with how that all turned out, but it's so crazy. And I, from my perspective to covering true crime, she was so inspirational to me. This is probably one of the most interesting and inspirational people I've personally met, because I was so inspired by the way that she handled herself and was funny too. I mean, it goes to show that you can be yourself and still do an amazing job at what you do.
Especially in this field. I mean, you would think that you'd be so desensitized, maybe lose a piece of personality, but no, she's all there.
No, that's exactly right. And she paved the way for a lot of other female FBI agents who came up the ranks after her. But man, she was breaking those barriers, and it was a pretty cool thing to sit down with her.
Yeah, interesting story,
Great
interesting
stuff.
woman. Good stuff. Thank you.